So we have 3 B grade coaches. We have Penn State's James Franklin, Minnesota's PJ Fleck, and
Oh,
Iowa's
did we
Kirk.
want to go through comments really fast? I apologize. I forgot to do that.
Yeah, we could take a. We want to take a couple.
Yeah, let's take a couple comments really fast. So, exploring with Ben and Sam. I think it may be the first time I've seen you guys in the chat. I apologize if it's not, but thanks for being here. Dan Lanning fans here says, "Yep, Lanning is an A by far. Riley is trash. Riley's not too much trash, right? He's C minus on here, but I think we'll get into him here in just a second. And our friend Jack on Bucks, he said absolutely correct. You have to judge a coach on how they perform versus the program standard. Absolutely, yeah. I think we're on the right track there. And then just a bunch of other comments with Bert and people like that. So yeah, I think we're good there. All right, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, remember in my article, I have this table right in the article, so you can access it right off of bigjeffs.com. So, all right. So the 3 B-level coaches, the first one's James Franklin. So now that Ryan Day has won a national title, I think James Franklin has taken over as the coach with the most varied opinion on their coaching acumen. Coming into the year last year, I think Ryan Day had people saying, well, yeah, he's definitely a good coach, but how good is he really, right? In big games, he can't win them. He can't beat Michigan. Well, he proved that, right? He went 4-0 in big games. So now it's on James Franklin. He takes the mantle from Ryan Day. And he's often listed on the most overrated coach list. So I do think he's a good coach for sure. I think he's on the brink of being considered great, but he's got to get it done, right? So he is 64-33 in conference games. He's completed his 11th year at Penn State. That's scary. He's actually the second most tenured coach in the Big Ten. So 66% conference win rate. That's 4th best among the current Big Ten coaches. That's pretty good. Compared to the 5-year prior win rate, he's 1% point better. So the prior 5 years, it was a 65% win rate. So 1% better. And then the prior 15 years was just a 58% win rate. And that included some of the, the sanctions that they had and some of the things which really did impact the program. It pulled down those results, but he's 8% better than the prior 15 years. So that's pretty good overall, right? His career win percent is 69%. That's overall. That includes his time at Vanderbilt. He has a 71% win rate overall for Penn State. So 101-42. He's 6-6 in bowl games. So that's good, but not great, right? You see a lot of good here and then kind of good, but not great, right? You like it, but you want to see more is kind of what you get out of it. I do think the 66 Big Ten win rate, it feels like it should be better. I gave him the B+ grade. You could convince me maybe he deserves a B grade, right? Given it is Penn State. They're supposed to be a blue blood. These stats here kind of show they're a low-level blue blood. So I'm going to still stick with the B+. The bottom line and what my numbers don't show and why you could bring him down is what would his record be in big games, right? And that's where he's failed. So, 1-15 record versus top 5 opponents, 4-20 record versus top 10 teams, and then 15-29 versus top 25 teams. His record against Michigan and Ohio State is 4-17, including just 1 win coming against Ohio State. So from a big game perspective, I mean, he's C or D level for sure, right? But the good thing is he has a really talented group coming back this year. He has a chance to totally change perceptions of him as a big game coach, just like Ryan Day did this past year. It can happen. I'm not sure if it will, but he's capable and he's got the roster to do it. Next up, Minnesota's PJ Fleck. And so along with Franklin, this is another coach.
There is a typo you got there. You got TJ Fleck instead.
Yeah, PJ. I did this too. Yeah, PJ. My bad. PJ Fleck. Thank you. Need to make that change.
That's all right.
But widely varying opinion on PJ. I know JR, you're one probably that it's kind of a hit
I'm
or
high
hit
on
or
PJ.
miss.
I'm high
Yeah.
on PJ.
Okay. 34-36 record in the Big Ten over his 8 years. So that's a 49% win rate, right? He's the third longest tenured coach of any Big Ten coach. But that win rate is actually 5 percentage points better than the prior 5 years before he came aboard. And then the prior 15 years before PJ came along, Minnesota was winning at a 38% rate. That's pretty bad, right? So he's 500 or so, but really pulling up Minnesota compared to recent history. Minnesota probably doesn't have huge NIL funding and things like that. So actually, that's pretty good. He also is raised by his 6-0 overall bowl record. I mean, that's impressive no matter how you slice it, right? 6-0s, and then a 60% win rate at Minnesota overall. He has a 59% win rate when you factor in his time in the MAC. And I would just say, when you think about him, Minnesota is rarely in the top half of the Big Ten when it comes to recruiting. In fact, next week we're going to go into some historical Big Ten recruiting statistics. That's pretty interesting. They're never in the top half, and yet, he's good at developing players, consistently competitive every year. JR, I think I saw you put something up, an X post or something kind of on that topic of how for their pro day, they brought in a bunch of people. I'll let you talk to that when we get to you there. But he's definitely a developer. You can't argue he's not a good coach. He's definitely at least a good coach in my book. All right, next. Iowa's Kirk Ferentz. He's going to get a B-. He's the last one in the B category. Longest tenured coach, 26 years in Iowa City. He took over for Hayden Fry. That's during my era. Hayden Fry was there for 20 years. So think about that. 46 years they've had two coaches. I mean, crazy stability there in Iowa City. It's also why they, don't like to change things a lot, right? So he's 128 and 89 in conference. So he's a 59% win rate. So how does that compare? So he's actually 10 percentage points better than the last 5 years of the Hayden Fry era. So last 5 years, Hayden Fry were winning at 49%. And then the prior 15 years of Hayden Fry, they were winning at 59%, the exact same amount. So long-term, basically, Kirk Ferentz just continuing what Hayden Fry had, winning about 60% of games, right? Going 6-4 in the Big Ten, if you will, right? That's pretty good, though, right? That's good, but maybe not as good as Iowa fans would like to see. He's 10-11 in bowl games, so that's good but not great, right? But they've made a bowl in 21 of 26 years. Iowa's made a bowl. That's impressive. I mean, ask Wisconsin fans now that they're not in it. They want to get back to bowl, and there's many teams that haven't made bowls. Nebraska didn't make a bowl for 7 or 8 years in a row. 62% overall win rate. I just think it deserves a B-. It still puts him 7th best among coaches. And so just to wrap up this section, so those really B and above, which I would call like good grades, right? To me, B is like, it's kind of like average. What did I have it labeled here? I called light green or B as good performance. I called deep green or A as very good or great. The light tan that are coming up, I'm calling poor or below average. And then the deep tan is going to be bad performance. So bottom line is 7 of the 18 coaches get at least good grade. JR, comments on our B-level coaches?
Yeah, I think James Franklin is interesting, B+ this year. I would have thought maybe at least an A- just because he did win a couple of playoff games. However, I know you're looking more kind of win total, and they did go to the Big Ten championship there as well, put up a better fight against Penn State than I think some people would expect. And so I think, if you're looking beyond the numbers.
To clarify, though, I'm ranking him in his tenure at Penn State. So not just this year, right? So while this year's performance definitely could lift him up, I still want to look across the entire performance, just to be clear.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just talking about this year in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, when you look at the entire tenure, I do think he gets a little bit of a knock for some of those records when you look at what he took over with kind of what Bill O'Brien gave him. Bill O'Brien did a good job, but also Bill O'Brien didn't leave him in this best spot. You know, he had a number of walk-on offensive linemen and stuff like that in that situation. So his like top 25 records and stuff like that do suffer a bit from what he took over in that scenario. But even then, like you said, he is a blue blood. You know, you've played Ohio State for so many years now. You would think you'd get more than one win against Ohio State. You know, yes, Ohio State has been dominant, but you would still think, you know, what's he got? 3, 4 wins over Michigan?
He would have 3 wins over Michigan, 1 over Ohio State.
Yeah, 3 wins over Michigan. So you know, you would have think maybe a couple more, but you know, that's kind of where Ohio State's program has been at, and it seems like when Penn State has had better teams a couple of times, they've been on the road, which I don't think has suited them well. But at the end of the day, you got to win those games if you're James Franklin. So I think some of those records definitely leave him outside the A portion, but he's teetering right there. He could definitely get into the A portion with one more good year, possibly win a national championship this year with all the talent they have coming back. Yeah, PJ Fleck, I don't think people realize how bad Minnesota was before PJ Fleck took over. I mean, it wasn't like, you know, 3-9 every single year, but you know, Jerry Kill had a couple of 8-win seasons in there, but I mean, for the most part, this was a team that was 500 pretty much every year. You know, you wanted to be a bowl game type of team. You know, in 2007, they only won 1 game that season. PJ took them in his 3rd season from going 5-7 his first year to making them 11-2 his 3rd year there. And since then, he has had 3 seasons of 8 or more 8 or more wins with a full football season. So, you know, he did struggle last year, still won that bowl game against Bowling Green. But I think overall, you know, when you take that into account, when you take the NFL development and stuff, it's just such a crazy stat to me. I've had to double, triple check it so many times. But for him to have 6 straight seasons, if Ariante Ursary gets drafted in the 2nd round or the 1st round this year, for him to have 6 straight seasons of getting a player drafted in the 1st or 2nd round, and the only teams with streaks higher than that are Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, like that's just insane for a program like Minnesota. Now you could argue they've not performed well enough with that NBA talent on their roster. I could understand that a little bit, but at the same time, like I said, they won 11 games before COVID. After COVID, they won 2 9-win seasons right after that. I mean, this is not a yes, the past 2 years, especially last year, were not what you hope for. But I mean, Zach and I have talked so many times. 1 or 2 different plays from Minnesota, and this is a 9-win football team or a 10-win football team instead of an 8-win football team. So it's just kind of crazy the way it's went for them. And then Kirk Ferentz, yeah, I think Kirk Ferentz, you know, it's hard to, you know, have the grade change much when you've been there over 25 years, right? It's kind of like, you know, at this point, the grade is what it is, unless there's a huge drop off or a huge, you know, upgrade. Overall, I mean, longevity, everything going on there, the NFL talent and development for Kirk has been excellent as well. What he's able to do with some 3-star players and stuff like that, it's really impressive what he's been able to do. But this is just, I mean, this is kind of the Iowa program under Kirk Ferentz. They're going to be there. They're pretty much always going to have a good season. They're probably not going to be in the hunt for the Big Ten championship unless you have divisions and they're in the West and they win the West or anything like that. But overall, this is going to be a solid team, and you know, you're not going to just automatically put a W next to their name when you're on your schedule. You think you probably will, right? If you're Ohio State, you know, Oregon, Penn State, you think you probably will, but it's not completely automatic year in and year out. So I think you're spot on with those. Maybe a little bit higher for Penn State, but I get I get what the numbers and stuff like that where we're at.
Yeah, you definitely can make arguments here. It's for sure not saying this is the perfect statistics to use.